So today I'm going to be talking about DisCrit, which is disability and race critical theory. And there are 7 tenets of DisCrit, so I'm going to go through each of those. So the first tenet is that our entire concept of normal is centered around whiteness, which leads to people of color who already differentiate from this norm being more likely to be labeled as disabled because they're already different. And tenet 2 is that multi-dimensional identities are a whole cohesive identity and they cannot be separated. So basically what this means is that, like, take for example a black disabled person. You cannot separate their blackness and their disability because they have very different experiences than black people or white disabled people. And this difference between the experience of white and black disabled people is later elaborated on in the reading as hostility and infantilization. Sorry, I have a really hard time pronouncing that word. But basically, white people are infantilized. White people with disabilities are infantilized, which basically means that they are treated like they can't help themselves, that they need more help than other people. Like, able-bodied people will, like, say, open the door for them or try to take their books from them and just do things that they obviously can take care of themselves. And they are well-meaning. They think they're trying to help, but it's very demeaning. And it seems like it's out of pity, and they just think that that disabled people can't do things for themselves, that they aren't capable, which they are fully capable normal human beings. And also, just treating disabled people differently than the way that you would treat other able-bodied people is inherently wrong and creates a problem. However, this is very different than the way that black people with disabilities are treated. They are often shunned and pushed away and seen as aggressive or violent and just treated completely differently. Like, in classrooms, they're more likely to be sent to the office or suspended for the same behavior as their white disabled peers. And this continues outside of the classroom into the real world, where many of the black people killed by police were autistic. And so they, autistic or deaf or had some other type of disability that led them to not react in the way that the police officers expected, but instead of just seeing this as a behavioral difference, they saw it as aggression or resisting arrest or something like that and use that as an excuse to brutally murder them. So that's quite a different experience for black and white disabled people. And tenet 3 recognizes that disability and race are completely social constructs. They have no biological definition. They have no biological anything. They literally are just not even a real thing. We completely made it up. It's completely just a social and political thing that has been created in our society. Yeah. All right, and tenet 4. Tenet 4 is DisCrit wants to push out voices of those who are not heard, of marginalized populations, rather than how it normally has been, just talking over them, talking for them, and stuff like that. Like, a lot of the research done on disability and stuff has been done by white, able-bodied, mostly men, who just do not even consider the different experiences of the different subsets of the disabled community. And tenet 5 recognizes the long history of racism and ableism in the US and how this still affects these people today because of the laws that are still put in place that enforce this ableism and racism still today in the 21st century, which is absolutely insane and ridiculous. But yeah. And tenet 6, this one was the hardest one for me to understand, so forgive me if I am a little all over the place in my explanation. I'm going to do the very best that I can, but basically it recognizes whiteness and ability as property, and that a lot of the gains that have been made for disabled people have been also in the best interest of white able-bodied people. So I really did not understand this until Dr. K gave an example, so I'll share that here as well. He talked about how, like, on sidewalks where it's like flat, where on the corner where you can get up. I totally forget what it's called. But yeah, that was originally for disabled people who utilize wheelchairs to be able to get around more easily, um to have just accessibility to be able to do the same things as able-bodied people, like literally just go down the street. And of course, this was not enough to get city planners to actually implement this, because of course there's not that many disabled people. There's not that many people who use wheelchairs. So until they presented it as also something that would be great for strollers for moms, that's when it got passed, of course, because that is obviously way more important. Um, but yeah, this idea is called interest convergence. The interest convergence, and that it basically means that the interests of Black people or people with disabilities are only accommodated when it also aligns with the interest of white able-bodied people. Right. And last tenant 7, is that all forms of activism and resistance should be accessible to all marginalized communities, including disabled people. So, like, take for example, like the BLM movement last summer, like all the different marches and stuff that happened with that. What happens if it's a Black disabled person who wants to participate in this but can't? Basically, they should be able to participate in all different forms of activism. And then also, this tenant says that no form of activism is more valid than another. Like, you can totally be an activist from home, online, on your computer. You can be an activist by educating other people. There's so many different ways that you can be an activist, and all of these different ways are just as valid. And yeah, that is DisCrit.